All right. Hi, everybody. Looks like everybody just got dropped in. Apologies for any delay. So welcome to the SAEM 2023 moderator training webinar. It will be myself and Colin Grenadier. He should be joining shortly. But in the interest of time, let's go ahead and get started. If you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt. This is really meant for getting you the pearls and the information that you need, but we will be going over a lot of the things that you need to know. So with that, I will go ahead and get started. So like I said, the purpose of this is to make sure that all moderators are prepared for any and all potential challenges and to standardize the quality of moderation for e-posters, lightning orals, and oral presentations at the meeting.
Paul, I'm just letting you know that I just joined. I apologize
Awesome.
for coming in late, guys. Dealing with a little bit of a back injury, so I'm going to let Paul go for a second. But
no problem. All right. Well, I mean, I guess the first thing to say is thank you. Thank you to all of you that that signed up to moderate. I mean, like outside of the actual presentations, I mean, like your participation is what makes this meeting work and making it run smoothly. So thank you again. We could not pull this off without you all. So I'm just going to dive into e-posters. Colin, do you want me to?
Yeah, I'll do this part.
Okay.
Is someone else just really quickly administrative thing? Is someone letting people in? Okay, great. So we're not responsible for that. So we were lucky enough to get the JW Marriott in Austin. I think it's going to be a beautiful facility. They gave us a sort of 3D map of the third floor where we're going to be holding all of the poster sessions. They're limited to just 2 rooms, 301 and 302, which you can see here from above. They're fairly spacious. And what you can't really see here is behind the entrance door, there's going to be a table there that's going to, I think, provide a home base for the moderator and the MSA for e-posters. There will be some handouts there. If you need them, we'll go over that in just a minute. Who's advancing the slides, guys? Sorry.
Me.
Okay, great, Paul, if you go to the next slide. So the things to remember about the e-posters are there going to be 7 per each room, 6 per each room, excuse me, and you're going to have 7 minutes for poster. That means 5 minutes per presentation and 1 to 2 minutes of questions. The absolute most important thing, and we're going to echo this over and over again, it's going to be on the 1-page sort of cheat sheet that you'll have when you get to the meeting, is that you really, really want to read the abstracts ahead of time. Okay, you want to be familiar with who's going to be presenting, what the order is, and have 1 to 2 prepared questions, ideally, when you walk into the session that you're moderating. It's an issue that there are going to be some posters that are more popular than others, or that generate more discussion than others. So there might be some posters that, you know, you can't stop the questions. You want to make sure, and then there are going to be others where you need to use your 1 to 2 prepared questions so that there's this awkward silence afterwards. In general, if someone else has a question to ask, I don't ask questions when I'm the moderator. I hold mine for only the situations where no one else has a question. And I'm pretty clear up front that additional questions beyond the 1 or 2 should be held until the end of the session. Another really important thing is that you're going to be walking from poster to poster, and you want to try to avoid splintering of your group, right? So, you know, oftentimes if people have a question that they didn't get to ask at a poster, they'll try to stay behind with the person that is giving that poster presentation. We want to really discourage that up front. Encourage the group to stay together as a group and say, you can go ask additional questions at the end, and encourage the presenters, of course, to stand by their poster for a few minutes at the end in case there are additional questions. Let's go to the next slide. Probably the second most important thing, and that's why it's in red, is to come early. So certainly don't come late. I would recommend not coming on time. I would come early. Your MSA will be there early. And you want to coordinate with them. And particularly this year, where we need to make sure that the people who are presenting are actually the people that signed up to present, it's going to be important to be there in advance. You can use the time that you have, that few minutes before the session, to make sure that they are the right person, that each person is there and that they're the correct person. Now, we all know that sometimes people decide to come in the middle of an e-poster session, and that is frustrating. There's nothing we can do about it. But you'll just have to manage that on the fly if that happens. But ideally, the poster presenters will all be there at the beginning. You can just quickly confirm. Now, what do you do if there is somebody that says, oh, so-and-so couldn't attend at the last minute because they're stuck in the ICU and I'm presenting for them? Well, if that happens, then you're going to have to pick up that form that Andrea Ray is going to leave for you in the poster session room and have them fill out a disclosure, so that we have that on file, ideally before the end of the poster session. Ideally before they present, but absolutely before the end of the poster session. One other thing that comes up often is what if, how do we get the posters pulled up on each screen? And what if they're having trouble, getting their poster pulled up? That should not be a problem. And that is something that can be managed by your MSA. There will be a central iPad there that all of the presentations will be run off of, that the MSA should have and should be familiar with. If there is a problem loading, that's where you're going to want to use one of the phone numbers. And I believe, guys, correct me if I'm wrong, it's Holly and Kari that are going to be the people that you're going to call if something's going wrong from an AV standpoint. And again, just improvise, just move on to the next poster if it happens to be the first poster, for example, that can't get pulled up properly, and you can always come back to that. So I already jumped ahead. I apologize. This is the instructions, and I forgot something, so that's good. Remember, this is relatively new, right? It didn't used to be as important, or we weren't tracking it as closely, but this year it is absolutely critical. So again, if you reach a poster and the presenter is not the person that it's supposed to be, then you have to announce that to the group. You have to have the presenter fill out that disclosure form and announce their disclosures. Right. And here's the other thing that I said, which is basically you're going to text Holly at this number or have the MSA do that to get somebody to come help you. All right. So in general, I would say that the best strategy, and remember, there's different strategies to this. Different people feel comfortable doing different things as moderators. I think all of us feel like the best way to handle it, though, is to try to give instructions to the crowd at the very beginning. Okay. And Paul and I both were discussing how we do this. We both like to acknowledge and thank the crowd for coming. So to make it a positive thing as opposed to a punitive thing, introduce yourself, tell them who you are, and basically give them some instruction on courtesy. And that includes the things I was saying before about making sure that they don't break off and try to have a side conversation. In a room like the ones we're going to have in Austin, that's going to be really distracting. And you really, really want to take the group and try to keep the group together. The other thing that's very frustrating that I'm sure we've all faced is when everyone leaves after the third poster, right? Or the sixth poster, and you're left with one poster presentation and there's no one there. It's rude. Obviously, there are going to be some people that need to go to a different session, but you want to try to keep that to a minimum. So I always announce, please stay till the end of the session. And of course, be upfront about the fact that you're going to be strict on timing, 5 minutes per presentation, 1 to 2 questions afterwards. All right, we've already talked about most of these things. We have gone back and forth about what's the best way to warn a speaker that they're up on time. Hand signals, the problem with that is they may not see it. I personally just will say something to them. Try not to be too distracting though. And of course, ask people to introduce themselves when they ask questions, and do that yourself. Model that behavior yourself. One of the challenges of the e-posters that if you haven't done e-posters before, but you're used to doing oral presentations, is that with oral presentations, everybody's sitting down. There used to be a clock or like a little buzzer there that would turn colors. You're not going to have that with e-posters. So you're going to be looking at your phone or your watch or whatever it is you need to keep track of time to make sure you stay on track. Again, we've talked about some of the challenges. You do the best to minimize the distractions when people leave or try to walk in after the session is already underway. Yep, we talked about this too, but I think it bears repeating. What if no one asks a question? That's when you want to have one prepared question or some sort of comment, prepared remark per poster. Especially if you see a way to tie posters into the broader theme of the session, that can be appropriate. Again, remember that you may ask one question and that may stir up conversation and other questions. So you don't have to ask all of them, right? I generally, my goal with asking a question is to get other people to ask follow-up questions. If absolutely necessary, I'll ask 2 questions if there's nothing, if there's no one else that wants to. All right, I think that's basically it. Paul, did I forget anything with e-posters?
No, I think you covered it all, but want to pause here for the audience to ask any questions that they may have about e-posters or moderating in general.
I
Would
just have a
somebody
very
be-
basic question, if I may. Are you going to distribute these slides, or is this going to be part of that page that you said we would get when we arrive in the room?
So as I believe these, so we're recording this. So this recording will be available, and I will make the slides available through SAEM, and you should be able to download them. And I believe Colin and I are going to be putting together a 1-pager that I think is going to get texted out like the day before the conference starts, so that you have information. So we may have a link to this, but that's a good question.
Okay, thank you.
Exactly. All I'll add is that you can go back and watch any webinar that's ever been done by SAEM. So you'll be able to access this years to come.
Please don't.
Yes, I know, right? Especially with me with my back injury.
And I was planning on going back once a month for the next, few years. So
Well, yeah, well, I guess you'll get the alt metrics up, so it'll be good. I think somebody else-
Is somebody gonna send us the abstracts of the session that we're moderating?
No. You mean a list of the abstract, a list of which abstracts are going to be there, or the actual abstract itself?
So assuming what you're saying already is that nobody's gonna send us the abstracts, where are the abstracts that we can get them before we go?
Bob, you should have gotten an email already with access to that. I mean, I got it probably, I don't know, a month ago, 6 weeks
Yeah,
ago.
I just got it a couple days ago again. But again, Aaron, that's the list of the sessions, right?
Right, but you can go in and you can click on and then open up the abstracts individually. I mean,
Yeah,
that's how I've always accessed them.
And certainly through the app,
yeah.
through the
right.
meeting app, you can go in and read all the abstracts.
So I tend to go in and download them all into like a Word or PDF document.
Yeah.
And I usually read them on the plane flight.
And I tend to look up who it is that's going to be presenting, just so I know a tiny bit about them.
So
This
it's
is an
on the
assistant
app
professor from whatever. Yeah.
and the schedule's on the app. And if I have not been able to get
Okay.
on the app,
Did you get a text message from Andrea Ray?
not that I'm aware of.
So Andrea Ray is, she is texting all moderators to let them know of what sessions that they're involved in.
Okay, I got
So I will reach out to her and let her know that that you have not received the text.
Is that 847-997-6180? Andrea Ray. Here we go. We're
Okay.
good.
Good.
All right.
Okay.
Sounds good.
And then definitely find out, reach out if you can't get on the app, because I think the app is really critical.
Absolutely.
Thank
That's another good question. And that goes for anybody else on the call that has not been able to access their abstracts yet. It's probably a good to just try to do it this week, even if you're not going to read them this week until you start heading on your way.
Yeah.
There was a question in the
This
chat,
is-
Paul, about the same thing, how to reach out if the app's not working, and Holly put the answer in the chat.
Awesome.
Bill, it looked like, or I don't know if does anyone have any other comments about poster sessions, past experiences that they've had, tips that they feel like would be helpful for the group?
Just in reference to what they talked about is that, so what I did is I took the app, I assigned all my favorites, that I was moderating, and then I can see the abstract. I've actually breezed through most of my abstracts, no matter what they are, whether they be oral or whatever, and you can see your abstract then right from the app. So it makes your life very easy and on the fly and everything. So just I think the app's very valuable. I know some of us are old and like paper and pencil or hammer and chisel. So
Yeah,
guess
I
that's the
agree.
problem.
There was a chat comment. I do that's exactly what I do too. Is put my abstracts in the favorites. So I think I would second that. I think the app has gotten better every year. So I didn't used to be an app subscriber, but now I am.
Absolutely. All good questions. Anything else before we proceed? All right, so next up, lightning orals. All right, so as opposed to the poster sessions, as you can imagine, these are seated, hopefully with a table in the front of the room that both the presenter and the moderator could sit at, or at least the moderator could sit at where they're facing the audience. That way you get an idea of what the crowd is feeling, being able to monitor for distractions, and I think it adds to your ability to really control the room. So it's 8 minutes per lightning oral abstract. So that's 6 minutes for the presentation and 1 to 2 minutes for questions. And like we said earlier, please have read them and have a couple of questions or a brief remark that you can help use to transition to the next presentation. Again, arrive early. And like I said, you wanted to sit at the front table facing the crowd if at all possible. And much like the poster sessions, you want to be able to go up early enough and check to see that the presentations are ready to go. If not, you should be able to open them and determine how to get them on the big screen. The MSA is there to help if you're having trouble with that. And then I would also say that it's probably a good practice when you first get to SAEM to go by the speaker ready room just to get an idea for what the AV is going to look like and how the abstracts are organized. It's been a little bit different each year. Again, like I said, I like to thank the crowd for arriving and being punctual and hopefully staying for the entire session. Make sure you introduce yourself. Talk about the courtesy that Colin had already gone through and describe the presentation timing. I actually don't know if we're going to have buzzers or lights, so you may be using your phone to keep track, but make sure that you are indeed setting your stopwatch or your phone at the beginning of each session, and you at least communicate in a way to the speaker when they're at least 1 minute out from being done. Lightning orals. So whenever it's like I've been to many meetings, and whenever the door opens, there is a large amount of crowd noise that comes in, and it's extremely distracting. So please let the audience know that they should refrain from opening the door. If you can, you should be able to close it. Hopefully there won't be a lot of people coming in and out of the meeting. But like I said, you should direct them to not open the door. You should introduce each speaker, their institution, and the title of their talk, and hopefully they should not have to repeat this information when they begin their presentation. They should be able to just get into it. And that's one thing that I would communicate to the presenters. And then if you're facing the audience, a good way to moderate the questions is to have people raise their hands and let them know that you'll get to them in the order that they raise their hand as long as time permits. Like I said, you need to keep track of time. I found that in oral presentations, you may have some people that are very interested in the topic area and have lots of questions for each presenter. But you do want to make sure that you are at least distributing the ability to ask questions among the group. If somebody is trying to dominate the session with most of the questions, you're there to help prevent that. And like I said, you need to have read the abstracts ahead of time and be ready to ask. Orals, Colin, I'm not sure if you want to do this one, but it's not too much different.
Sure, it really isn't very different than the lightning orals. The only thing I think that is worth mentioning is that these are the top 100 abstracts out of almost 1,200 or that were submitted. So we're really dealing with the best science that we have at the meeting. So I think even more I generally put even more preparation into this kind of session. It's still only 8 minutes per presentation and 2 minutes of questions. But I've definitely had oral abstract sessions where people stay another 20 minutes afterwards, assuming that you have the room to discuss, because some of these are pretty impactful and pretty interesting, and of course also motivated audiences. Again, I'm a big, yeah, go ahead, Paul.
I was going to say, to that point, you may come into the room for your abstract and find exactly that people are milling around, asking questions, networking. As it gets close to the time for your session to start, especially in the 5 minutes prior, if people are not exiting the room, you want to at least be trying to shoo the people in that aren't there for that session and gather the crowd that wants to stay. You're trying to identify who the presenters are, to make sure that they're present. And the same thing applies for the orals as well as the e-poster, that if somebody is there to present but they're not the person on record, they need to declare that and fill out the disclosure.
Yep. And I'm also pretty clear with the instructions that I give. I mean, again, it can be frustrating as a moderator that people leave in the middle. They just come for the one presentation of the person that they're supporting, and then they don't stay for the rest of the session. So I'm pretty frank about that as a moderator, and basically say, do not leave. First of all, you're going to open the door, like Paul said. I second that. And second of all, it's rude. It's rude to leave in the middle. So I try to push that as far as it can go. Of course, you don't really have any teeth to enforce that, and people are going to do it, this being an emergency medicine meeting. I was also going to second what Paul said about facing, if you have the option, don't sit amongst the audience, sit up front. It can be a little, it's a little bit intimidating sometimes, but the thing is, it really allows you to see the room and see who has their hand up and stuff like that a lot better. So I advocate being at the front of the room facing the opposite direction.
A lot of these
are, all of this is, I think, basically repeats of what we've already said. So it's very similar, with try to limit noise, take control of the session, don't let one person dominate by asking many questions, or certainly get into an argument with the presenter. That's my least favorite thing. Yeah, that's sort of what we put at the end here. There's kind of two things in an oral session that you fear. One is escalating tension, so diffuse that, have a way of breaking the tension. Usually you can make a comment and move on, or cut the tension a little bit with a funny comment if you're able to come up with that. And the other thing is dead silence. So you want to generally avoid that if at all possible. It's a tricky balance. You want to give give enough time so that people will ask their questions, but on the other hand, you don't want it to be totally dead. And I mean, that is basically what we have for you. Trying to think if we forgot anything. I don't think we did. I know there's one thing that is sometimes raised about oral sessions, which is, are there going to be microphones or places for the people that are in the audience to come ask questions? You might have seen that at other meetings. We will not have that at this meeting. The rooms are generally fairly small, so people can just speak up. You might want to have them stand up, and I certainly ask them to introduce themselves and say their institution in an oral session when they're asking a question. Paul, you have any other thoughts about that or other?
Just a couple of things. So a couple of things from the chat. So no buzzers or lights. So you're using your phone or whatever device, if you brought a stopwatch to keep track of time. As Ryan put there in the chat, we're still in need of several moderators. If you are moderating a session that is up, that has a presentation that's up for an award, you are already one of the two people that will be grading that award, and you will get a link and instructions for how to do so. That will be forthcoming. But I believe that the award sessions are also marked on this Google sheet or the sign up sheet. So please take a look, see if there's anything else you can sign up for, and then we'll also be sending this out to the rest of the program committee as well.
Yep.
Question.
Final closing thought. Anybody have any comments or questions, things they've experienced that they want, wanted advice on how to deal with? Otherwise, I would just say it's preparation.
Go ahead.
Know
Go ahead,
your
Bill.
abstracts before you get there. Please arrive early, work with your MSA, take control of the room. And thank you.
Yeah, I think Bill had a question.
Yeah, I was just going to add that I think everything that you said is great. And this may simple, smile while you're there. It doesn't hurt. It sometimes breaks the tension. Some of the presenters are very nervous. I try to actually, as they come in, particularly for the e-posters, I ask them to, make sure they stand by their e-poster initially, and I introduce myself so they know that I'm the moderator for the session. That helps. And again, just shake their hand and smile and make sure that they feel comfortable and stuff. And if you can introduce your MSA as your troubleshooter, that also works. And that comes with being able to arrive early enough. One question I have is, there multiple e-posters going on at the same time?
Not in the same room, no.
Not in the same room, because we've done that in the past, and that requires even more coordination, but that's not an issue this time. So I wouldn't worry about that. So those are just some things I find. And I do think it's important to encourage the audience, regardless of which format that you're in, to really ask them to ask questions. What I often say to them is, it's much better when their peers and colleagues are asking the questions than I am. And I says it enriches, and we have a responsibility, professional responsibility to, be appropriately challenging our presenters and stuff. So I think all those little things up front, not a 5-minute introduction by yourself, but something really quick and succinct and to the point and encouraging really is important.
Great. Thank you, Bill.
Absolutely. Other thoughts from our wise audience? We have a mixture of veterans and newbies here.
All right. Good. Well, thank you, Paul. Thanks for covering me for the first minute.
No, it's no problem. My email was on the screen, but my phone number, I'll put it in the chat if anybody has a question.
I'm putting my email in the chat too. Either of us are available if you want, and feel free, if you see us at the meeting, to introduce yourself if we don't know each other. And thanks again.
Absolutely.
Bye, guys.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.